So, what about anthropocentrism then?
Okay, so anthropocentrism to me is a point that has historically been associated in our cultural consciousness with Abrahamic religion, at least in our cultural consciousness as a society, right? So
Yeah.
you see already in the Bible that God created the earth and the heavens and everything from nothing, basically. And he made it for the humans to rule over. And he made
Mm-hmm.
himself in man, a man in his image,
Yeah.
but he didn't make the animals in his image. This was basically the whole caveat about this.
Yeah, he makes the
Because
animals for the humans too.
man has godly property, while animals do not have that.
It's
Oh,
gonna go boom.
So, and God basically created the earth for humans to rule over, which is basically the point of Abrahamic religion.
Yeah.
And since then, Abrahamic religion has been so culturally dominant in Western society that this has basically become subconsciously the dominant position of most people who have not investigated deeper ontological theories about the world.
Okay, the invader is coming. Let's go. Let's head down here. And
Oh,
down
yeah.
Here.
And these theories that go against this anthropocentric worldview have begun either with Spinoza or Aristotle. I'm not actually sure, because Aristotle is actually pre-Christian. So, anyways, pre-Christian in what we consider to be Christians.
I thought, okay, let's just go a little bit on this tangent, because I don't think Aristotle coined this, because for him the idea was of like a prime mover, which is God, which put things in a place for a purpose.
Yeah,
so
okay,
Aristotle would argue that like animals.
With Aristotle myself.
Yeah, Aristotle would
I was
basically
just
I
kinda
think
saying
argue
because
that animals are also there for a purpose for us, basically. So it's more like a prefigurement of like the Abrahamic anthropocentrism, I would maybe argue, although I haven't read like the specifics.
Okay. I'm gonna put you up a little bit in the volume
Yeah.
so I can hear you better.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, anyway, Spinoza devised this theory, which to me is the most influential one, of there not being a dual system of ontology, but one holistic system. So,
Yeah, I think I can agree.
So instead of there being godly essence in the world and material essence or ungodly essence, everything is in Spinoza's view actually godly essence, or made of God. This includes, of course, humans, but just as much it includes animals, plants, all matter or substance, basically.
We did.
Oh, I'm dead. It's fine, you can just resummon me.
Yeah.
So, okay, I have to kind of gather my thoughts here. So, he basically devised that theory.
So can I maybe, while you gather your thoughts, talk at least a little bit about Spinoza, because people are listening, maybe not aware of Spinoza. So Spinoza basically said that everything is substance and God is substance, because God is I'm not sure if I can nail it perfectly, but God has infinite attributes and properties, and man can only comprehend finite attributes and properties. So therefore, man must be part of God, and everything is God. This is kind of the gist. But this sounds like all like, oh, God, spooky. But in fact, it's kind of like Spinoza materializing God and putting spirit in material nature. So for him, it was like a giant shitpost against the church at the time and the religion, because it kind of like challenges the dominant position of humans in the world.
Exactly. So Spinoza devised that theory, and then later on, his theory became very, very popular.
Can you like put? Oh, it's there. Okay, I found your symbol.
Deleuze further developed his theory. Hegel did to some extent.
Yeah.
And it's very popular with modern feminists, postmodern philosophers as a whole, and with a wide amount of different theories, as well as post-Marxist theorists who have used Spinoza as well. So this is kind of the history of anthropocentrism against holistic kind of ontology. And I am firmly in the camp of holistic ontology, where
I think you're doing a little conflation here. There is no unable to summon Phantom. I think you need to try this again. So there's no ground on which we can compare anthropocentrism and holistic ontology. Those are two different things entirely. Anthropocentric merely means you view like the world through a lens of humans. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a Abrahamic ontology, which puts humans above nature inherently or divides them inherently. This is, how would I put this? This is not the distinction we should make, because they are not opposites. For example, you can have a holistic ontology that is anthropocentric. You can. It would merely like I would argue that I have a holistic ontology that covers everything, and it's also like a Deleuzian thing, right? But you can still make it anthropocentric by ways in which you, for example, derive ethical conclusions from it. And I would say anthropocentrism is more or less ties into ethics more than anything.
I don't think many scholars would agree that.
Well, at least in the way I put it, let's say that.
I don't think many scholars would believe that Deleuze's and also I'm not too familiar with Hegel myself, and Spinoza's theory are compatible with anthropocentrism. I do not really agree with that.
Depends. I can certainly make it work, I guess. Because the kind of fundamental idea of Spinoza's is that... yeah, okay, we need to clear up with like anthropocentrism, like we need to...
Because what does it really mean, right?
Yeah. What does it really mean to us is probably the best question to ask. Because in itself, anthropocentrism is more or less a description. We describe, when we say anthropocentrism, we describe a way in which people in, like, let's say philosophical eras have come to think of the world. We describe zeitgeist of thinking of the world as centered on humans. It's analogous to the conceptions of astronomy, where we've thought first that the world was like centered on the Earth, and then we discovered no, it's centered on the sun. It's heliocentric instead of what's the other term? I don't know the other term right now.
Wait, where are you? I can't see.
I'm running around this maze-like structure trying to find items. The zombies just keep getting up, so basically ignore them.
Oh, I didn't know
that. Yeah. So this is more or less what we mean when we say anthropocentric. We're describing something. And we can root this especially in Enlightenment philosophy. And I wouldn't even say, for example, in Hegel or something. That's already a bit too advanced. I would say more like in... I don't know, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, people like that, you know, where they basically derive from, like, and you correctly trace this to its philosophical roots in Abrahamic religions and so on, because in Buddhism and Shintoism and so on, there was never such a thing as this kind of anthropocentrism until, like, the Meiji Restoration in Japan, for example. That's kind of where they started doing anthropocentrism, and, you know, on those grounds, we can certainly say that it had bad consequences, because with this... let's say, objectifying of the world around them, they justify a lot of fascism with that.
Yeah, basically.
So it is undeniable that anthropocentrism has in it potentials for becoming a total shit idea. Like, we don't need to start about Abrahamic religions, which of course have through their supremacy and reign justified tons of shit. Also, like race divides. If you're like easily saying that humans are above nature, black people are closer to nature.
There could easily also be a hierarchy within people.
Yeah.
If that is the case.
So, but this is the problem we're gonna have to talk about. What kind of hierarchy are we constructing when we, for example, say that animals have a higher level of consciousness than humans? Are we constructing a hierarchy that is...
I don't think that at all. That's the case at all.
I say we must ask these questions if we do such a thing. So I didn't insinuate that you are doing such a thing. But so here's the thing. When we are saying that such a hierarchy exists, it is not a hierarchy of like might makes right or like dominance or power, but rather one that is of a certain analysis, and we have a reason for this analysis. So, for example, and this is my case for basically anthropocentrism, when I say humans have a higher level of consciousness than animals, that's anthropocentric, and I can only say they have a higher level of consciousness because I only value the parts of consciousness in the way in which they relate to humans, in the way they like make culture, make language, and we derive from culture and language, or rather from a shared psychology that we can understand each other, and so on and so on. So that's obviously anthropocentric. But what I derive from this is merely this one, and I think important conclusion, and it has reasons that are rooted in utility, or in a utilitarian perspective strictly. The reason is that animals are not worthy of the same ethical considerations as humans. Because if we were to disagree with this, we would go into very problematic states.
Oh no, I totally agree with that. Because
okay, so for me, this is an anthropocentric conclusion.
I don't think it is, because I think just as much as humans have their own mode of consciousness, as have animals have their own modes of consciousness, have modes of communication. I mean, we already went over this in text, but it's probably better to clarify this also for the audience, that humans and animals cannot really...
Sorry, but we are recording right now. If you don't want to be on the recording, then you should probably not. Because we're having a debate, so we're recording it. Okay? Okay. I'll take this as a yes, so please continue, Xiff.
Yeah, so basically, the theory here is that we view the world through a human lens, basically. Our language, our modes of authorization, the way we see the world, it's all made within a sort of human paradigm in which we construct our own meanings in our own language.
We need to be careful to not conflate anthropocentrism and humanism. Those are two different things also.
Yes, but what I mean by humanist basically is that it's basically within a human framework. Not necessarily that human are the most important people, are the most important like conscious beings in the world, but that everything around us is observed within the context of being human. So that's kind of what I mean with humanist.
Okay, humanism in general is more specifically about the idea of human rational agency, which is a bit odd, I want to say. So we could find flaws in like the idea of purely rational human actors, and anti-humanists and post-humanists challenge this idea.
Also what I want to feed into with this, maybe later, but the main point for at least in this juncture is that humans can only view their world, so their world of appearance, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that concept, it's a Hegelian concept, in their own sort of world of appearance. So in the way we observe animals and nature is necessarily one in which we project our own humanism or humanness onto this object of otherness, basically, right? Yeah. So in the way we see a dog, we see the dog being happy, we project on them our own human emotions of being happy. So we imagine not the dog being happy as a dog, but the dog being happy as a human, which is basically my point. So in this way, however, I would try to say when a dog communicates with another dog, this is much more clear because they have their own world, their own Umwelt, as UX School calls it, of communication. They have their own mode of communication, in which humans cannot tap into because they simply do not have the tools, the communicative ability to do such a thing. However, this also means, for me at least, that humans also have their own mode of ethics, which is not compatible with a mode of ethics for a certain other organism. So I think that projecting human ethics upon animals is such the same mistake as projecting your own human emotions upon animals.
So,
because
yeah,
our
I
own
agree.
Ethics are and cannot include the animals, because animals have their own ethical systems. So I would try to pose.
Aren't we both arriving at the same conclusion then, that animals aren't like considered in the ethical systems in the extent, except in so far as they relate to humans, or necessarily can only be considered in so far as they relate to humans?
I think this was the main misconception, because me and Xiff in the text were both arguing from sort of the same position, even though we don't really agree. Because I do not think we can view animals as moral subjects. I really do not agree with that.
Well,
but I also would not agree that humans are somehow has a higher consciousness than animals.
Okay, I mean, that's two separate debates. If you really in your ontology don't want to talk about the idea of higher or lower consciousnesses because you dislike the framing of evaluating what is higher and what is lower through a human angle, then sure, we don't need to do that. As long as we can agree that there's a substantial difference between human consciousness and animal consciousness, then sure. But okay, and here's the next thing. I want to get into the Umwelt idea of Uexküll at least a little bit, because in some extent we scientifically can by now, between Uexküll and now we have certain developments, we can by now invade this Umwelt of the other. We can trace the chemicals with which ants communicate and lay their trails. We can stick electrodes into a brain of a cockroach and make it move in a certain way. We can communicate to them, and we can understand their communication on a chemical and electronic basis, if you know what I'm saying.
On a mechanical basis, material base.
So the thing is, this seems to be how, at least, let's say, very primitive life forms like very small insects or amoebas or ants seem to communicate. It is chemicals. You can completely replicate the way in which an ant would follow a trail by just spreading the appropriate chemical. It would simply do what it is biologically built to do in a response to the chemicals. You know what I mean? So in some sense, we invade the Umwelt of the ant by really understanding how the ant communicates in this way. We just know it by now. And we know that it's so what human grammar, for example, what human language differentiates from animal language is that humans have something called generative grammar. We have structures of sentences, of meaning-bearing sentences, in which we can basically put any old word. You can have a grammatical structure, and as long as you put in words that the other person can recognize, the structure in itself is clear to them, because humans can generate grammar. That's basically the gist. Animals cannot generate grammar. They can react to single signifiers that don't stand in relation or historical or chronological context. This is, as far as I'm aware, scientifically not debated. And this is where I find that animals have generative grammar is debated.
I don't think animals have this sort of grammar you talk about, precisely because this sort of grammar is entirely encapsulated within the human mode of communication. So any sort of communicative method an animal would have would necessarily not be able to be analyzed with a theoretical framework that is only designed to analyze
this all sounds
animal.
Nice and fancy, but I want to like give you a strong example for this, or rather a different explanation for this. The fact that humans have generative grammar means we can make statements about the past and about the future. Animals, at least so far the theories about animals, perceive only presence. Perceive not in past and future, but only points in time. This can be traced by, like, I've seen, like, this is a cool video by the Vsauce guy has this YouTube Red series, which is what's it called? Mind Field. He made a video there about like monkey research in Japan. They went to the researchers and they found that a difference between monkeys and humans seems to be that the monkeys have like incredible like sense awareness of the presence. They can see like a picture with like numbers on them. And if they have learned the numbers, because they can like behaviorally learn numbers, and they know like if I press the numbers in the correct order, then I will get my reward. If they can, like in a flash of a second, where you as a human can maybe see 3 numbers, they can memorize like 12 numbers and in rapid speed like perfectly replicate the order in which they are supposed to appear. So the brain researchers there, the animal researchers there, then derived, evolutionarily speaking, that humans kind of traded the ability to perceive like all the information of the presence at once, with the ability to, and I died, fuck, with the ability to communicate over time in language. The way in which language compartmentalizes our perception of time and reality, of flows of time, of relations of things from past to present, robs us of the ability to fathom as much information at any point in time as an animal can. So an animal lacks this ability of language. And this ability of language is basically the cause of culture, because by networking with other animals, but which also ended up being humans, because basically we fell from the trees, and falling from the trees. Well, this is just now I'm kind of like bullshitting, but you know, I'm extrapolating this idea presented in the video a bit, because they also talked about this. So basically humans fell from the trees, and because the survival on the bottom of the trees, like on the ground, had to have more like strategic communication, evolutionarily humans, what ended up being humans, started to develop language tools, which included like abilities to plan and communicate over time, and even have a conception of how to communicate something that is past and something that is present, which is called and the process by which we lost the ability to perceive the presence in full and traded it off with like the ability to perceive and think through time, what is called the cognitive trade-off hypothesis. So it is a hypothesis, yeah, sure, but the point where I'm arriving at is that humans in this way have a distinctly different evolutionary skill they develop from any animal, which is precisely this language, which causes everything we as humans see unique to humans. Everything can be brought back to this, to be honest. This is the function. This is the way in which, like, for example, like monkeys would use primitive tools. They would use like a stone to crush open a coconut or something. By the way, we can jump off down here. But they would not like conceive of combining this with another piece of tool to make a more complex tool. This is something we could only find in human development, because this thinking, the strategizing over time is what is unique to humans. So my argument, and why I think the anthropocentric perspective in this regard is extremely important for us, is that we are the only actors on this planet, and that doesn't still responsibility for this planet, that can actually see the future, at least insofar as we can make predictions, and that can actually evaluate the past insofar as we can talk about the past and draw conclusions from the past. So, as it stands, we are kind of the only ones who can do anything with it other than just, you know, live. And I don't know about you, but I personally value this, what humans can do with the world, a lot, even though we fuck up a lot. We can invent shit, we can create art, we can like have language, we can build cities that are bigger than like anything. We can prevent natural disasters. Like, we can destroy the world, that's for fucking sure. But we can also, like, nature is cruel. Like, We had fucking ice ages, species dying, like volcanoes, like destroying complete ecosystems. Humans can combat shit like that. We have certain ways in which we can like alleviate the effects of natural disaster. And it's feasible to say that if humans aren't destroying the planet, we might be the ones saving the planet at some point from a natural disaster that is coming, you know? Planets do die from like natural chemical reactions.
I really don't enjoy the language of saving the planet.
Well, how else can we frame this?
I mean,
it's a hypothetical, sure, but you know, that's kind of the responsibility we have with the skills we have.
Yeah, okay, to like, I kind of elaborate on my point, because it sounds kind of dumb for me to say saving the planet is dumb. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that saving the planet is what we mean by saying saving the planet is saving the planet as
a human habitat.
It is for as a human habitat.
Oh, that's true. I mean, humans. There are humans who would consciously decide to say nature is more important than me and would like put themselves lower. Those exist, but I'm not arguing that this is like a reasonable stance.
Okay. I don't think so either. Mostly because I don't believe in a difference between humanity and nature or that sort of thing.
So we should probably talk about what you mean by that. But first, let's go off on this
probably. But
current
I
argument.
had another point which kind of slipped my mind, sadly. But the fuck is it?
Are you here, buddy?
Oh my god! I thought this fucking guy died. Fuck. Anyways, fuck. It was something about. You know what? Let's forget about it for now. Okay.
I'll go and get you. Eventually.
So, okay, let me just lay out kind of Spinoza's view of this whole ordeal, which I think I was going to do anyways.
Sure.
What you said is kind of the difference between humans and kind of all other lives on Earth. And Spinoza kind of dealt with this in a surprisingly dialectical way, I think, at least, in that he thought that the way in which humans continually adapted and expanded their mode of production, basically their ability to produce and reform the environment around them, change did not like separate them from nature as we kind of see now, because this is kind of the popular way in which human civilization is seen, that we were kind of within nature and we were a part of nature when we didn't have big cities, when we didn't have civilizations, when we're basically hunter-gatherers, that this is our sort of primal natural state. But as soon as we invented agriculture and started developing a sort of mode of civilization, or which is kind of a loaded term, I would rather call it a expanding of production in a more maybe Marxist sense. But in this way, humans kind of
have you put down your sign?
Separate. Yeah, I have.
Sorry.
In this way, it is conceptualized in popular culture that humans kind of separated from nature over time, right? That as much as humans continue to produce more goods, continue to expand their population and invent more scientific methods and technologies to expand production of goods even further, and of being able to adapt and reform their surroundings, that we kind of separated from nature as we did that. Spinoza does not agree with this at all. He thinks that, and this is, of course, he sees nature as something sort of virtuous. He's not like Hume. He's not like a sort of nihilistic philosophy who sees that we are kind of doomed to be the subject of this world and how we are doomed to be kind of intrinsically part of this world.
Let's wait for the invader here. If he's gonna come, we're gonna just wreck his shit.
But that we, that nature in itself is virtuous already. That it is sort of positive and has positive spiritual as well as material properties. So, where I was going with this is that as much as we expand our production, we don't separate ourselves from nature and kind of become alienated from nature. No, rather, we take a greater part in nature. We produce nature from our own nature. We produce God through ourselves, and God produces itself.
There he is, by the way. Just outside.
Oh, yes.
I want to ask, and maybe to get back from the little abstract sounding discussion, how does this like stand in contrast with what I said about humans being able to like shape nature, protect nature, or rather construct nature? Because this is literally kind of compatible.
Yeah, like, it is compatible.
Okay, so that's anthropocentric still. Like, you can make it...
It is... I mean, it is not really anthropocentric, because anthropocentrism kind of derives that humans would be kind of the center of all this and kind of the source of all this. But it is not the source. The source is God itself. So it is not we that create the nature around us. It is nature that creates us. And through ourselves, we recreate that nature.
Yeah.
So
that's fine.
We are kind of very small and insignificant within this framework.
Oh, well, as individuals, yes. As a totality, I mean, you can't really argue that, because...
No, still, because he thinks we are just like a... oh my god. Because he thinks we are just a... And you can see this when you look at like the kind of amount of time span we are talking about. We are just a kind of insignificant portion of history when you look at not even the history of just the Earth, which is already like tens of thousands of times longer than humans even existed. I don't know if you...
I mean, we are certainly not like a meteorite hitting the Earth, but we could become something like that once we do climate change properly. So I would argue humans are not like... it depends from which angle. Like, from the cosmic angle, we could argue that like the Earth has only been there like 1 hour for like the entirety of the cosmic calendar.
That's not even true, because like the cosmos is about... I'm not too educated on this either, I must say, but I'm pretty sure that the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and the cosmos is about 7 billion years old, if I'm not mistaken, though.
Yeah, however, so the Earth has been there long, but at first it was like a flaming rock, so there's not much what we would like relate to Earth. Yeah, but like this whole process, this kind of whole cause and effect relations of just basically things happening and on a massive scale that we can't even imagine. That is kind of his idea of substance and God. And the anthropocentric idea is more that we are the source of like the world is revolving around us. So we are the source of what we create and not nature or God. Now that you frame it scientifically, it's just factually wrong, so I have to agree with you.
Yeah.
Like, in the cosmic scale, we are just like a speck of dust.
Yeah, that's basically, at a very basic level, what Spinoza's point
is. So what are we concluding from this? This is the meat of the discussion.
Okay, there's a whole lot of things you can conclude from this, and this is why there's so much work on Spinoza and why scholars are generally so enthusiastic about Spinoza. So basically, the question is more like, what is our question from which this ontology can explain more things to answer that question? And if you're gonna say that, if you're gonna bring this back to animal consciousness, I'm not sure like how to kind of continue with that, to be honest. But maybe you can do it. I don't know.
Well, I'm still having like a tough fight with this invader now that we're one-on-one.
Okay, you can finish it.
Yeah. Oh, shit. He might have got me. No. Close one, though. So, basically how to bring it back to animal consciousness. Well, I don't know. I personally think this knowledge of, like, the human insignificance in the scope of the cosmos isn't really telling me anything about how humans today should live their lives. It is, you know, I've always found the idea, like, sort of inspiring, as in a sort of, like, atheistic, spiritual way, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. This doesn't.
But
really
this is, of course, like a very basic, like Carl Sagan point, and this is not at all the totality of what like Spinoza is actually about.
Yeah,
but to make
absolutely.
it kind of understandable, that is one of the kind of feelings that Spinoza's philosophy taps into.
So here's still what I have to say. Like this doesn't like this awareness does not like challenge what I consider anthropocentrism. And that is that we, as humans, mainly look at the world out of a frame of reference that is human-based, look at history through a human angle, and make prescriptions on a human basis, because what else could we do? And I think, and this is maybe the more important point, we can make wrong prescriptions from a human angle, but we can also make all the correct prescriptions from the human angle, at least in my opinion. We do not need to abandon.
I mean, correct in what way? In a moral way? In an
in a moral
sense?
way, in an ethical way, yeah. But because obviously, like ethical systems also just derived from humans. We've like reached a point where we're basically in a tautology, and I don't know where to go from this, because if you agree with my fundamental thing that like humans should have human ethics and human ethics should be where our prescriptions come from, then we do not disagree. And if your point is also that animals aren't worth of the same moral consideration as, for example, humans, then we also agree.
Yeah, this is why I kind of got upset also in the text channel, because you seem to think that I actually at any point in the discussion try to defend that we as humans could use our ethical systems to do ethical sort of statements about animals, but I don't agree with that at all.
I mean, okay, so is the opposite true, that we cannot make any ethical statements about animals?
No, I don't. Maybe.
Let me posit it this way. If we as humans are allowed to make ethical statements about animals, like for example, for humans it is okay to eat animals. If we can make the statement, aren't we hierarchizing consciousnesses? Aren't we saying because this life, this animal, does not is not on our level of importance, or because we can't tell anything about its level of importance in some like abstract way, we are allowed to eat it?
I think the whole idea of levels of importance is not really significant in.
But I mean, we are eating them. I know you're like only pescatarian, but you eat fish, right? This is.
I mean, to be honest, this is something I'm still kind of thinking about, and I'm not quite sure on. I think even scholars on Spinoza are not sure on. He even in a letter about ethics wrote that he doesn't really have like a coherent sort of ethics that goes beyond the idea that this is Spinoza's ethics is kind of a whole other can of worms. But basically what he says is that he doesn't really have any moral sort of absolute answers for why, for instance, murder, which we do with animals, would be wrong. He doesn't really have that. So this might be a problem if you think about it, but so his ethics was mostly concerned with knowledge and how we use our knowledge,
and freedom.
modes of passion. So
just asking, are we with
I
this
think this is a
staying
very
on the
hard thing. Which
are we with this staying on the anthropocentrism topic, or it's now like developing something else?
I mean, it is kind of anthropocentrism still, because if we're gonna debate about whether it's moral or not to murder an animal, it's kind of hard to say, because I have a feeling that most people will feel like quite bad murdering an animal. I mean, but then in a Spinozist way, you could say that that's just a passive emotion that is kind of has to be disregarded, because it's not really something you create actively yourself.
So this now goes into the aspect that I earlier called Spinoza's lack of free will. Like you contradicted me and said there is free will. Sure, okay, acknowledged. But if you say we can like say this is a passive affect, as in it's like, let's translate it. Maybe you don't like this translation, but I think this just means it's natural for humans to eat animals, right? Because it's nature, it's a part of the cycle, blah blah blah. You eat them, you shit them out. Plants grow, the plants are eaten by other animals. It's kind of like this chain works. Humans are not outside of this chain. While humans may choose to not eat animals and sustain themselves, there's no like ethical reason to do so in a Spinoza system, because there's no like neither an imperative nor are humans in any way outside of the natural relations, so nothing like special applies to them. Is this incorrect?
Okay, I was kind of busy with almost dying, so I didn't really catch everything about it, but basically I think what you said is true, that there's no really I mean, Spinoza famously did not really care about animal ethics. He thought that humans had the right to kill animals as much as they wanted.
Okay.
And that
was
basically his position. Because he just think that is okay, this is a very important point, and one that I will always stand by. Because he thinks that killing animal does not equate to killing or lessering nature, because he doesn't see humans as outside of nature. He thinks that you killing an animal is simply an act of nature at work.
Okay, as I described.
And so is an animal killing another animal. So,
as I described. Then let me pose you this question. Maybe you don't know, so I don't want to make it a gotcha. Does Spinoza list any reasons why a human should not kill another human?
No, this is the tricky thing. He just says that if you are a morally upstanding person, you will just not get the passive emotions that are necessary to be able to kill a person. Which is, I think, kind of compelling.
I don't know. I think that's very short-sighted. Okay, I explain.
I just thought about this today, actually. So, okay, no, but you have to understand it more, because Spinoza has an ethics which is, it's kind of complicated. He wrote 5 books called The Ethics, so I mean, granted, the books are not only about ethics, but his ethics is basically this. His sort of pure thing that creates positive moral value in his ethical system is that of knowledge, reason, and joyful affect, and pure love of God, what he knows and what he calls. And it seems, and what he says is negative is passive affect and passive passions, which are the passions of sadness, glory, ambition, and a couple of other ones which I don't remember.
Okay, I just want to quickly interject that we shouldn't. Yeah, I just wanted to say we could basically talk about all these with like psychology and science and basically fiddle around on all of them. But let's just stick with the very basic notions and take it as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why what I was trying to do. So,
hit it.
Spinoza thought that it sounds very sort of arbitrary to say sadness is bad and joy is good. But what he called joy was not really the emotion of feeling joyful or feeling happy. What he called as joy is the emotion that comes with a certain action. And that certain action is to gain more knowledge with the art of reason about the world and your place in God, basically, in the universe. so this is what he called, and this for him was a very spiritual endeavor. It was just to think about yourself, be introspective, and kind of think about your place in the world, and think about your sort of lineage or your sort of he was also very engaged with the concept of cause and effect. He felt that everything was a sort of combination of a multitude of different. I mean, you might be familiar with this if you read Deleuze, of different combinations of different causes and effects that are so sort of interconnected and complicated that it's kind of almost impossible to analyze. But to gain more knowledge about this relationship and gain more knowledge about your own place within that relationship is what he called joy. And he also said that if you gain more, this is kind of the core of his positive ethics. And the core of his negative ethics was to be plagued by what he called reactive or passive emotions, which basically compares to emotions that are not actively produced by you gaining knowledge, gaining more knowledge about yourself and God and your surroundings, but that is passively produced by other people and other people's affects. So basically, whenever you see someone getting angry at you, you will feel the need to get angry yourself, because this is how human emotions basically work. They are sort of social functions that kind of function to streamline human behavior. So this kind of streamlining of human behavior he sees as very bad, and he sees it as very morally negative.
He wants you to actively think and decide, basically.
Yes, that's what he wants to do. And he thinks, I'm not sure if I would agree with this myself, but he thinks that if you do this and you don't get plagued by passive emotions, that you will simply not even think about killing a person. So he thinks that all things that are morally considered outrageous or preposterous are all produced by these, what he calls, passive passions.
Okay, so we're making basically ethics on a human nature argument, that a human will naturally not feel inclined to feel, to want to kill another human. That's where we're at, right?
No, he does naturally feel inclined, but only when that wanting is produced by something that's ethically bad.
Okay,
basically.
so we're saying that we're, as rational thinkers, we would never feel inclined to kill a human. That's what he's saying.
Yes.
Like, okay. I mean, it's debatable how true that is, but it's not about.
I mean,
true.
I'm not sure if I agree with it myself.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure, because, you know, people have constructed a lot of rational systems to kill other people. I forgot whose quote it is, but it's an amazing quote. It's
but
about
he also has a theory against that, just so you know. But I'll let you finish. Sorry.
God, what was the quote? The quote was really cool. It was about you don't need religion to make bad people kill, but only with religion can you make good people kill, or something like that, you know.
Yeah, with ideology, right?
Ideology, yeah, but I think the original quote was religion, but yeah, ideology is basically analogous in this way. This is why I like the quote.
So,
like, I'm not just strawmanning religion, but I mean ideology.
No, that is actually a very good point, because you would think that, like, okay, rational decision making is good, but then what about ideology? That is a very good point, because
I mean, ideology is
many
mainly
people who
irrational, right?
ideology may think that they're very rational and that they're doing the right thing because they're rational. That's actually how most bad things happen, not just because someone is angry or sad. But what Spinoza says is that this person does not really possess true rationality, because okay, this sounds very corny at first, but it is much more nuanced. So what he sees as a big problem, and this is basically at the core of ideology. I think he is a very early thinker of ideology, which is actually very impressive, I think. But he infers that how we see cause and effect relations is very flawed. I can. This is best to give with an example, which actually a Spinoza scholar at the symposium gave me, but I think this is a very good example. Imagine that a stone has consciousness, which is, ridiculous, but let's you do it for the sake of argument. Yeah. And there is a little boy with a slingshot who decides to shoot the stone into the air, and then once into the air, the stone thinks, "Wow, I'm flying in the air. This is so amazing. I'm flying in the air, so this must be kind of my destiny." And then he creates a sort of, and then he starts thinking, why might I be flying into the air? What might the cause of this be? And then he thinks, if I'm flying in the air and I am a free subject, a free individual, because this stone is a free subject in his own eye, then I must have chosen to fly in the air. So then this must be the exercise of my freedom, and I am doing the right thing and moral just thing by flying into the air, because it is my free choice that I have done so, and my rational decision. Now what the stone doesn't know is that he is just flying into the air because a guy threw him into the air, or rather slingshotted him into the air. So he kind of creates a story or a narrative to make himself the center of action and the agent of action. Basically, he creates a world for himself in which he is the center, in which he is the agent of action, and in which the world kind of revolves around him and his decisions and his free will. And this is kind of what ideology does. It creates this sort of story you tell yourself to make yourself believe that you are sort of at the center of what is going on, and that you have sort of moral and free choice in the matter. So this is basically the example I wanted to give. And by that extension, it's the same with someone who might be doing this for ideology. He might be thinking that this is the same with, for instance, an angry person, a very angry person who might, let's say, just try to hit his wife because he is so angry. He must think, it is because my wife is being a certain way, or because I am a certain way. But he doesn't think about the fact that this might just be entirely the product of his own sort of imagination. Not his imagination, but the sort of cause and effect that put him on this path. His upbringing, his emotional development, maybe even the weather, maybe even things he would never consider. All those he reduces to a story that he tells himself.
By the way, we're currently recording, so if you don't want to be on the recording, you're where? Oh, fuck, he already left. Okay, he already left again. No worries then.
Bye. I'm sorry, this was kind of long-winded and I had to kind of gather my thoughts.
So basically it's...
Oh, fuck!
So basically, it's a fancy and good way of explaining like how we could come to believe something is free will when it isn't free will, when it is like predetermined by something else. It's kind of like analogous in a way to like
it's basically
allegory of the cave, right?
Cause and effect. We always flip cause and effect. That We think we ourselves are the cause and not the effect of what is happening.
Okay, so good how you told me this, but let me return to the question. Like, or rather the discussion we had about ethics, which is the question, it's big, run.
Ow!
This is one of these passages where all you can basically do is run.
I don't want to die, man.
Okay, I died.
We're both dead. I should have chunks and asked this, man.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So to return to the question of whether or not Spinoza thinks it's okay to kill a human, then this is again, like he says. Okay, so this is a problem I see here immediately arising. He says that if you're like a rational person, you would never have the desire to kill a person. So he kind of implies that there is some true like absolutism of morals out there that you will tap into and have access to as soon as you're just rational enough. That's what he's saying. Is it not? Like a human in his nature, if rational enough, would never be inclined to kill a person. That's kind of the claim, right?
Yes, I think this is what he genuinely thinks.
Then I think we can abandon this kind of, because I don't think that's a very good understanding of humans. Like, it's a human nature argument. That's all it is. That's the caveat you come into with like old philosophers who like maybe haven't been considering this. You have some kind of transcendentalized essence of what a human is, of what they like tap into. Like Spinoza's implicit claim is if a human becomes rational, he becomes more free. By becoming more free, he approaches this ideal form of human which would never kill another human, for example. I don't know what else Spinoza says we become when we like become more rational and aware of our choices. What else are his ethical implications? Like, for example, the pursuit of knowledge.
Okay, this is a complicated issue because I'm not sure if he thinks this is present within human nature or not. Of course, he was not like a post-structuralist philosopher, which was not possible to be at the time. But I mean, you could theoretically be one, but that was not like popular at the time. So
you can make a strong case for a couple of 100 years later for people arising who are close, but yeah, not Spinoza probably.
So I do think Spinoza genuinely thinks that there is a sort of latent... Oh, fuck. I'm so bad with these elevators. Latent human potentiality that... but of course, Deleuze also agrees with it to a certain extent, that there is a sort of human potentiality to be better, or to be generally a more ethically positive person. Scared, man.
Let's head back for now. Let me out.
I'm not sure if it is a. How would you say, is it a nature argument, human nature argument?
Well, if we say
I'm not saying
that,
it isn't, but
see, here's the thing. If we say that only by becoming rational, every single human by becoming rational will not have in him the desire to kill another man. If we make such an argument, where would this desire, or this absence of the desire, be derived from, except from the implication that there is something to humans inherently? Okay. I'm
not sure.
To the
is it inherently?
I mean, where else would it be? Like, if we say
yes,
from this always results this, then we need to like conclude that like for every human this must be true.
That every human has the potentiality to reach this sort of rationality where.
Or are we defining rationality as those humans which are smart enough to not kill another person? Is this how we're defining rationality then? Because then we...
yes, basically. But because it's like the ability to gain knowledge about the world, right? It's not really...
Sure, but I gain knowledge by killing a person. Like in a hypothetical, if I'm on trapped on an island, there's like a few people, and I'm like, okay, to develop medicine, like anatomy, like to find out surgery, there is probably like some rational value in like learning more about the world by killing a person and cutting them open. Like, you know, this is just a weird hypothetical, but you know, that's kind of what we derive from this.
This is kind of the whole ethical hypotheticals where I'm not sure if you can take Spinoza's ethics to such scrutiny because literally no ethical system will be able to resist this scrutiny. Basically, no ethical system is immune to this.
I'm not sure I agree. Like, the hypotheticals are meant to test your principles, not to, like, break the systems. We posit a hypothetical to, like, a utilitarian to see, are you truly a utilitarian, or are you faced with a difficult decision and your emotions overwhelm you and reveal you to not be a utilitarian? That's why we have this hypothetical. Not to prove utilitarianism true, but to convince the person that they aren't utilitarian.
I think you can easily also construct hypotheticals that can sort of make a ethical standpoint, or at least the standpoint of an ethical system, much less compelling. Or
that's the point. You want to check if it can be a universal system.
Yes, but and also, I mean, ethical principles are always social things, right? The power of an ethical system is only as strong as how many people actually decide to buy into the ethical system.
But sure, but arguing with Spinoza, like, we want to find an ethical system that helps us, like, get more rational, get closer to the truth, realize our own freedom by finding a system that gives us enough or acts on enough information about the world so that we can come up with, like, the most rational conclusions, which would include not killing people. So in that sense, Spinoza could better realize his own claims of people who are rational enough would not kill anyone by having a like, sophisticated system which concludes this from, like, rational principles. Man? Yeah, you need to sprint and roll in the correct moment and not jump. Like, jumping is very dangerous here. I'm not sure if you're jumping.
I can't sprint and roll at the same time.
Okay,
dude.
then yeah, I know you're playing with mouse and keyboard. It's pretty bad. Maybe change a key for this. This is probably a passage where it's necessary for you to change.
Yeah. I'm gonna do that.
All right, I'm gonna return to the bonfire again.
Roll.
But I think we got a bit sidetracked. So
yeah, probably.
I want to return to the main thing. So we basically have in Spinoza, like, no solid explanation for why a rational person would kill an animal but not a human. There's no real there's no real argument made for this line.
I mean, okay, there is an argument made because Spinoza thought that killing an animal is a roadway to more self-actualization, and he was very fond of this concept where he thinks that killing animals will. No, he thinks that is, like, not in the same way. He thinks killing animals will create resources for people so that they can become a bigger part of God and of nature, so they can...
I mean, killing humans will also generate resources. We can gain knowledge, we can take their organs and put them into important people.
I don't think so. That is dubious, because... if you I don't know in any fucking society in which people are literally systematically killed so that they can make resources.
I mean, not officially, but China. Also, capitalism. If we really wanted, like, people systematically killed to generate resources, capitalism.
I'm not gonna pretend I have answers to this question.
Okay.
Because these are things that are thought up by, like, a philosopher very long time ago that did not think that things like organ transplantations were possible. He did not know that.
But at his time, feudalism existed, which is basically people putting in forever in serfdom to produce resources. This is not literally killing them, I am aware, but it's...
Yeah, but, I mean, we were talking about killing a human, so...
Yeah. I mean, there's wars, but I don't know what Spinoza's stance on war is. War in certain ways are certainly justified for human resources.
Okay, I think I saw a quote on his stance on peace and war.
You know what? We're getting a bit sidetracked. I mean, we can go into this, like, a little bit later. But first of all, I want to, like, ask you a question. Now that we've concluded that Spinoza does treat animals and humans very differently and sees humans' pursuit of knowledge as kind of central to humans becoming more like, I don't know, in sync with God, with nature, aren't we concluding that Spinoza is pretty anthropocentrist?
No, I don't think you can make that argument, because I think we already talked about this, because anthropocentrism is more about ontology than about this sort of idea of what it is to be a human or an animal. It's more about the idea that the universe is not really revolved around humans, or that it's not really made for humans, but that we're merely a part of it. That is the significant part here.
Okay, let's look at anthropocentrism.
Because we are anthropocentrism.
Anthropocentrism refers to human-centered or anthropocentric point of view in philosophy. Anthropocentrism can refer to the point of view that only humans are the only and primary holders of moral standing.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Where is this definition from?
Oxford Dictionary.
That they're the only of moral...
Let's go to Wikipedia and see. Anthropocentrism is the belief that human beings are the most important entity in the universe. Okay. Anthropocentrism interprets or regards the world in terms of human values and experiences. Okay, we have multiple things on Wikipedia. The first one is the belief that human beings are the most important entity in the universe is a big claim. I wouldn't make that. But anthropocentrism interprets or regards the whole world in terms of human values and experiences. This is my entire point this whole time. Like, we have no other way to interpret it except if we go and say animals also have moral values. The term can be used interchangeably with humanocentrism, and some refer to the concept of human supremacy or human exceptionalism. Anthropocentrism is also considered to be profoundly embedded in many modern human cultures and conscious acts. It's a major concept of field environmental ethics and environmental philosophy, where it's often considered to be the root cause of problems created by human actions within the ecosphere. However, many proponents of anthropocentrism state that this is not necessarily the case. They argue that a sound long-term view acknowledges that a healthy, sustainable environment is necessary for humans, and that the real issue is shallow anthropocentrism. And I find myself agreeing completely with this.
I mean, I think if you define anthropocentrism in the sense that that everything is from a sort of human point of view and a human perspective and a human moral perspective, then I don't think you can find anyone who is truly not an anthropocentrist, because there is just no way to view the world in a non-human lens. It is simply impossible.
This is a hard thing. I think Deleuze tried with saying humans are also just machines and everything is flows. And I think vegans who, from ethical reasons, out of empathy with animals, and think animals should have the same life, they maybe cannot justify this empathy, but moral intuitions can become axiomatic notions just simply by being you pick them, you make them. Basically, this is still a human-made concept, but if you as consciously create an ethical system that put yourself on the same level as animals without any further justification, simply as an axiomatic notion, then still I think that's not anthropocentrist, right? Depending on how you enact it. If you enact and say we are humans, therefore it is our duty to protect the animals and so on, that's why we need to do this and that to them, then maybe, because that would still be human exceptionalism. But
okay.
I don't know, it's kind of complicated. This is why I wanted to have this talk, because in my opinion, I read the definition and you just said you think everyone then is an anthropocentrist. Well, obviously not, otherwise there wouldn't be this conflict. But whether or not people who aren't anthropocentrist are correct or can be correct is another discussion entirely, and I think we seem to agree on that.
Yes.
Can you put down your sign too? If it's not already?
Yeah, I'm just fuddling with my controls.
Oh yeah, data controls. Okay, take your time.
I have to see what OK is, because it says the A key, but I don't know. That's for controllers. Oh. It's A, is that just clicking?
Let me go into my control settings. Maybe you can help you out.
Yeah. Oh, wait. I don't know. Confirm E. Oh, it's E.
Dash, backstep, roll, and jump are both space on my.
Yeah, I got it now. I think I'm gonna put jump on tab and then press.
Yeah, then while you are running, while you are dashing, you can just press tab to have the jump. That's pretty convenient, I guess. I don't know if that's. Yeah, tab is a good key. I'm just trying the hand position right now. Tab is good.
No, I don't want. No, I fucked up everything.
Oh no. Okay, you can probably set it to defaults then and just. Yeah, you can under input devices. You can set it to default.
Fucking mess, man.
But dude.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Okay.
I don't know how to confirm my fucking settings. It says. Okay, remove key binding, switch category.
Okay, I see. Let me check. Okay is A. Let me actually just try it. B is back. A is okay. Well, as soon as it's entered, you can just close the menu and it will retain the changed thing.
Yeah. Close the menu? You sure? Because I tried and it doesn't work.
Yeah, if I set a key correctly, like I said walk to H just randomly, just to try anything, and then I just go escape, and then I'm out of the menu, and it works. My walk is now set to H.
Not with me, man. It just goes back whenever. Maybe tab.
Okay, so what you do is you click on the binding you want to change. Like I'm clicking on jump. I click on the space, then it like turns like brown. I press tab. Yeah. Now I just press escape.
I have that.
And now I go back into the controls menu.
Was it brown when you saw it?
Oh shit! No, it reset. Sorry. Apparently that's wrong. Okay, so what you can do, and this is better. Right click, and then you have the menu. Okay, back. Everything appears.
Oh, remove key binding.
Yeah, now I have it on tab. Yep, it works. I fixed it.
But if I say OK, then it just...
Yeah, no, you need to go right-click and then back. That's what you need to do.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I have a question. And I want to ask you if the anthropocentrism debate is over. Because I think we've said our things, right?
Is it over? I mean, sure. Have we really settled everything? I think, to conclude, I think it's like, to what extent, it's by far not clear to what extent you say anthropocentric, because to some extent I think you can make a very solid case against anthropocentric, and that is when you frame anthropocentrism in this way. And that is that humans are not themselves the creator of like the world, and the world does not really revolve around humans, but that we are, and that most importantly that we are not separate from nature. This is the most important part, because I think most people don't really believe that we are the center of the universe and that everything revolves around us, but most people do believe that humans are very separate from nature, and that whatever we create is distinctly not really natural and distinctly apart from nature.
I would even argue that we should have an anthropocentrism while we see ourselves as nature. That's probably a big one we should consider.
If you... Okay, we should... So but that's kind of how I choose to...
I don't want to transcendentalize humans. I only want to look at what humans can do and how they do it uniquely, and what that means for the world. And for me, what it means for the world is this, that humans can transform the world, therefore they should. No, that's not really what I mean. They can transform the world, and because they can, we need to think about how we want to transform the world. And we should think about how we transform the world. Like, from a utilitarian perspective, let's say this. Like, if we know climate change is coming, we as humans should morally, like, feel compelled to stop it. If just to continue, to further our continued existence. But this means we need to exist in like a coexistence with nature. We depend on nature, and now like climate change posits the problem that we have disregarded nature to a certain extent in like a capitalistic mode of production.
We can't really disregard nature though, because
we have disregarded nature in our way of thinking, is what my point is. We have so far disregarded nature by producing ruthlessly without considering the long-term consequences.
Yeah, okay. So I am actually going to make this video which is exactly about the Spinoza's perspective and climate change, which I think Spinoza has like if you look at it from a Spinoza's perspective, I think it would be very unique on how to responsibly handle human production, because we now in our current system we did that so much that now we basically overdid it, and that our own existence is now in trouble because of how basically we disregarded the rest of nature, for instance. I mean, I guess you could say it. I'm not too happy with that formulation myself. But, anyways, I think his many green politics today will formulate it as that we have disregarded nature as an entity, and that we should preserve nature and preserve the earth.
No, okay, yeah, many Greens
really
would. Okay,
the case. We are ourselves nature, and whatever we do, we produce nature. So even if we burn the whole earth to a crisp and it's just a desolate wasteland, it will still be as much nature as it is now, at least in the eyes of Spinoza.
I agree with this strongly. But you know what this results in? That even like the most capitalistic, gigantic, planet-sized factory would be nature, as in humans created nature. We could say at that point, like if we literally.
But ontologically, that is true. However, I think we should do it differently, because I think our current way of producing is just not what Spinoza called a good mode of self-actualization. So it's just not. We don't accept the knowledge that is there, which is that climate change is caused by humans. That climate change is not only caused by humans, but is continued to be caused by humans and continued to be worsened by humans, and that we in the end will have to be able to take the responsibility for that. So,
or rather, suffer the consequences for it.
Yeah, to him, it is simply so that we should embrace knowledge of our own existence. We should embrace the knowledge that if we continue like this, we will be the victim of this whole ordeal.
Run away, the big one is coming.
Oh shit.
Just run back into the same hole. Yeah, you did it. Good.
That we will be able to deal with consequences, not nature, not anyone else. I mean, we are a part of nature. I'm very much not happy with this formulation. It's kind of hard to formulate this. But, you know...
No, I see what you're saying. I find myself agreeing with this, because here's the thing. What I said initially as my main thing, how I see it, is that humans, like, with what we can do, we basically can and should take care of nature. And that we should and can transform nature basically to fit our needs, which is nature, but a transformed nature. Like, we do transform it, even though it's just nature and we result from our nature and so on. You know what I mean? And I like this. My ideal, like, ecotopia is not one where we, like, return to some mythical, like, harmony with nature, because nature is by nature unharmonious and destructive in itself, like floods and earthquakes and all this shit.
Yeah, of course.
But that instead, like, we build ecosystems...
That is kind of the whole idea that
are more stable. That's my point.
Yeah, of course, but that's like But that's also kind of what Spinoza finds so spiritual about it, is that nature is not really the idealistic view that it is in popular culture in his eyes, of like
it's not Mother Nature, it's
birds and bears and the cute Mother Nature that will care for all his things, but just the totally uncaring process of history and process of the kind of universe that's totally beyond our imagination and beyond our own control.
So okay,
we have found that now it is beyond somehow in our control, because we have, in his eyes, become a greater part of God itself. But
so we don't transcendentalize humans and we don't transcendentalize nature, but we still argue from an anthropocentric perspective, even within Spinoza.
In what you call anthropocentric, yes, but I don't really call that anthropocentrism.
So my strongest case for this would be that Spinoza is one of the three rationalists in the scope of philosophy, and who is rational? People.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only real. You can't really make a case for like a rational animal, because again, like their mode of communication is just very different, and just an idea of rationality is already us like very projecting very hard our own idea of how a animal should work on the basis of how human psychology works.
Here's the interesting thing. When I think about now in this context about Spinoza, what he did, like Abrahamic anthropocentrism projected humans onto God, or what they believed to understand as God. Spinoza took that away from them, said like God is everything, it is infinite, it's incomprehensible to us, it's just nature, in the sense.
And we are also God in a way.
Yes, but we are rational, but he made nature not rational, if you see what I mean.
He made, this is kind of a weird paradox, which I don't really know how to come with, because I was actually thinking about this as well, because if we are God and God is kind of like our predetermined...
No, we are less than God, right? We are less than God. God is infinite in everything, God is substance, we are part of that. We are modern extensions of substance, so we're not God, we are part of God. That's Spinoza.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. That's what I mean, but maybe I wasn't clear enough. So we are part of God, but at the one hand we are part of God, but at the other hand he also kind of believes that we can kind of like not be separated from God, but like kind of do our own thing in a way.
Dude's coming.
You know?
The dude's coming.
He does not believe that we're totally like everything is sort of that predetermined.
Well, I think we're done. Oh shit, I'm dead.
You're
Fuck,
done, that's for sure.
He killed me instantly. I'm done for sure.
I was kind of thinking. So I thought, like, how is it that we're kind of in this whole... I see it like a kind of like a flow, where kind of our boundaries of individuality kind of flow into the rest of it. But then how can we also be the only sort of rational subject in it has very clear boundaries and kind of think as itself as its own thing? That's kind of puzzling, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose there we kind of end with Spinoza for now. There we need to go into Hegel.
Maybe, but I can't really talk about Hegel, man.
So, but this is... I think we've reached a very agreeable conclusion to the anthropocentrism. I don't think we have, like, except for the... So this is the thing, like, this should we do a hierarchy of consciousnesses? My conclusion for that would be, even though, even if we, like, consciously try to make ourselves aware of that we shouldn't, we kind of are. Because by focusing from a human perspective, because it's the only one we can't understand, it has an exclusive or special standing. It is just kind of unavoidable. Like, we put it above others, even if we, like, don't want to justify this for, like, destruction or oppression or dominance. But it just happens to be the only thing we can fully understand, or rather...
That's true.
Not even fully understand, but we can, like, act within.
It's more of a anthropocentrism driven by the lack of power than it is by the abundance of power, basically, is what I would say.
Yeah.
We lack the vision to understand. It's more... I think the two parts of anthropocentrism we talked about is kind of one version where people think we do have the ability to kind of know everything there is in the world, and with that knowledge can propose that we are the superior to that. That's kind of the classic Abrahamic sort of anthropocentrism. And the other is the sort of you can't really call it nihilist, because nihilism doesn't really exist, if you know, but nihilistic-esque perspective of we are anthropocentric because that's only really because we don't have the power to be anything more than anthropocentric. Or the knowledge.
Yeah, everything that would be not anthropocentric is like what we would say like a Deleuzian black hole, right? We will re-territorialize as a black hole, like incomprehensible.
Yeah. Basically, it's basically just like the void or the abyss of what is possible for us to understand.
That's where we get to like ecofascism and misanthropy, like hating humans as a race entirely, or as a species entirely, and wanting to get rid of them as a blight on the planet. Those are the kinds of positions that could result from that. And sure, we could.
I don't like that, because this is why I like Spinoza so much, because he is very positive. He's like super bloomer about this. He's like the opposite of it. Like, we might not be able to be like the most powerful beings in the universe. We might not even be able to be powerful enough to even understand our universe, but that makes it so beautiful, you know. And that makes it so that it is a more spiritual experience to kind of gain knowledge about who we actually are.